Now, another BlackySpeakz video that's over 10 minutes, maybe as a way to celebrate, you can maybe, okay, just maybe drop a like, you make that decision. Now, on this episode of The Fall Off, we're gonna talk about Lil Xan. Last year in October, I dropped one on Lil Pump that was pretty successful. I got some really good reception on that one. But the topic of rappers rising to the top very quickly and then a short period after, slowly starting to go downhill is one of those interesting things a lot of people like to analyze. Because you ask yourself, what exactly went wrong? Could have they done anything different to stay at the top? There's a lot of questions you might ask and that might pop up in your head. And in this video, we're gonna go a little bit deeper than that Lil Pump video though. So yeah, let's talk about it. Now, Lil Xan is of course a rapper who took off back in 2017 with the help of a Cole Bennett directed music video, and that was Betrayed. Lil Xan's image, you know, the way he looked, everything with the face tattoos, that really fit into that typical SoundCloud rapper look. Along with the Lil moniker, Xan was one of those rappers who blended into that whole wave just perfectly. Rappers like Lil Xan and, for example, Lil Pump are of course a product of Lil Wayne. The heavy drug references all over their music, along with the image aspect, are two big reasons as to why this is the case. By the way, as a side note, if you didn't know, nowadays he goes by the name of Diego, which is his real name. I'll still be addressing him as Lil Xan in this video since that's how most people recognize him. Continuing, another thing about Lil Xan is his rap name in itself. The Xan is of course an abbreviation of Xanax, an addiction Lil Xan has been battling for a while, and this is something he highlighted on Betrayed. One unspoken reason as to why I believe he got so much attention when he first came out is because of Lil Peep's passing. Now, why do I say that? Well, Lil Peep passed away on November 15th, 2017 from an accidental fentanyl and Xanax overdose. This was the same exact period when Lil Xan was taken off. Now, this created a whole bunch of controversy around his rap name. He very understandably got a lot of pushback from the hip-hop community. A lot of people saw it as a crazy thing that this rapper called Lil Xan was managing to blow up when Xans are what took Lil Peep away. To Lil Xan's defense, he did speak out against it on his biggest song, which is Betrayed, and his Xanarchy movement is against it. But then again, it's not like his lyrical content is congruent with this at all. Because, for example, on one of his bigger songs titled Slingshot, he starts off the track by saying, "I like lean, I like drugs, I like beans, I got plugs." This is the kind of lyrical content that he's been known for since the beginning. Now, he didn't blow up because he was a good rapper though. I think that's obvious. Lil Xan simply lucked out with getting the opportunity to work with one of the hottest videographers in the game, which is Cole Bennett. And we all know what happens when a rapper who's in the process of popping off gets a Cole Bennett directed video. That's a cheat code. Now, when it comes to Betrayed, even though this, is his biggest song and it is considered a hit by most people, it didn't really do all that well. The song peaked at number 64 on the Billboard charts. Now let's compare that to one of his peers. An example, Lil Skies. Now Lil Skies came up during the same time as Lil Xan. I think it's fair to compare them, but Lil Skies' placements on the charts are looking a little bit different. As an example, Sky's song Nowadays peaked at number 55, Red Roses peaked at 69, and then I peaked at 17. However, both Lil Xan's and Sky's album peaked at number 10 on the Billboard charts, so that's a draw. I think there's a comparison to be made here because these are two rappers who came up during the same period. Not only that, but both of them also kind of came up off of the same wave. One of them managed to get a couple more placements on the charts after he blew up, while the other didn't. Lil Xan was also featured on this track called Colorblind by Diplo, and that peaked at number 32, so that was a W for him. Everything isn't necessarily about placements and numbers, by the way, but when we're comparing two guys who come from the same exact world, it's a way for us to measure their success. Lil Skies isn't necessarily on the up and up as we speak, but he's still been able to maintain the success he got in his early blow up stage up until this point. I think Lil Xan set the tone for his career with Betrayed because that was the moment he started blowing up, but he clearly failed to keep that wave alive. Now let's talk about the moment when everything started going downhill for Lil Xan. The Tupac is boring comment seems like it was the beginning of the end for him. Now this was essentially the tipping point in his career, and it is for a couple reasons.
I can't believe this is what hip hop has become, man. I just can't. My mind is like blown, man. So, y'all need to watch some documentaries on hip hop.
Some whack ass non-rapping rapper named Lil Xan, Lil Xanax, some pill popping motherfucking face tattooed cornball, no skill, no talent motherfucker said that Tupac's music wasn't interesting.
Like I said, this was the beginning of the end. With this very simple Tupac is boring statement, he managed to turn everyone against him. A lot of things happened. For example, Waka Flocka banned Lil Xan from hip-hop, and to the whole hip-hop community, Lil Xan was now the opposition, aka the ops. I want you to realize this one thing. It's not that the Tupac is boring statement he made was really all that bad. It's number one, how he said it, and number two, which is the most important one, who it came from. This is a rapper who wasn't liked to begin with, and with a statement like this, you're asking for it. I think he gave people another reason and more ammunition to not like him. Lil Xan pretty much gave hip-hop a reason to cancel him. You can't, okay? You just can't come into the rap game and not put the utmost respect on the OGs, especially if your name is Lil Xan. It just is what it is. What I'm trying to say is he was already on the edge to begin with, and after this Tupac comment, he went off the edge. This actually reminds me of Lil Yachty. If you don't remember, when Lil Yachty was blown up back in 2016, he got himself into some trouble by calling Biggie overrated.
Overrated? I don't know.
Now, after this, Yachty apologized, saying, hey, I had never listened to a Biggie song when I stated my opinion, and now that I've actually listened, I think he's kind of dope. Now, I want you to realize that this was a very risky thing for Lil Yachty's career. He had been in the rap game for less than a year and was already turning people off from him by being so nonchalant about Biggie and calling him overrated. Even though Yachty's not close to as relevant as he once used to be, Lil Yachty at least turned out fine because he showed some remorse, and overall, he's a very likable guy personality-wise, so that's one thing that kind of made people overlook his Biggie comments. Also, don't forget that Kodak Black once said that he's better than Pac. He's of course been getting backlash for that for years now, but then again, Kodak has said a lot of things. He's not really a saint, so I think people are more likely to overlook that because they don't expect much from him to begin with. Plus, Kodak actually proved himself musically speaking. You know, he's dropped a lot of great records throughout the years. A lot of them are hits, and he's been embraced by the industry despite being so problematic because he can actually produce some great music. This is just a little comparison between Lil Xan, Kodak, and Yachty because all three of y'all been in the same exact position. Yachty and Kodak had no issues with moving forward after disrespecting the OGs, while Lil Xan did. Now, when it comes to Lil Xan in this particular situation though, I think this is one of the first cases where a hip-hop opinion has put a rapper in physical harm. Only days after his Tupac comments were brought to light, Lil Xan got swarmed by a bunch of Tupac fans wanting to fight him, and then that led to him having to call the police so he could safely get escorted out of there. And unfortunately, it didn't end here. More than a year later, in June 2019, there was another incident where a Tupac fan ran up on Lil Xan for his comments, and that led to Lil Xan having to pull out the piece he was carrying.
Hey, look at this guy pulling the gun right now. Look at this motherfucker. Hey, pull that shit out again, homie.
Now, isn't it crazy how one little hip-hop opinion turned Lil Xan's career upside down? I gave my take on this situation when it happened last year, but I didn't think things had to go this far. Now, I'm not the biggest Lil Xan fan, but the guy clearly had enough. That's why he pulled out the heat. I don't think he should have pulled it out if he wasn't gonna use it, because it would have ended very badly if the other guy was strapped. But everything that transpired from Lil Xan saying what he said about Pac was overwhelmingly starting to take over his entire career. You gotta keep in mind, your reputation as a rapper is extremely important. For Lil Xan, this situation exploding so much led to him being labeled as that rapper who disrespected Pac. I think the situation also made it very clear that Lil Xan is seen as an easy target to pick on. There's a lot of rappers in the industry who aren't particularly liked, but most of them have never ended up in a situation where their safety has been compromised, all because of a hip-hop opinion. As an example, 6ix9ine could go on Instagram Live and say that Tupac and Biggie never belonged in hip-hop. He could say that Kendrick is a whack rapper. He could say that J. Cole is one of the worst rappers on the planet, and nothing would happen except for some temporary backlash, and Tekashi would still be doing his thing. On the other hand, if Lil Xan said any of those things, he would not have a career. Is it fair? I don't really think it is, but hey, it is what it is. Now, when it comes to this particular situation, the fall off, to me at least, was kind of inevitable for Lil Xan. There's a couple reasons why I'm saying this. Number one, he really didn't have any staying power to begin with. And then since day one, like we talked about, Lil Xan has always been on the edge. And after something like this, this, I'm not surprised that he unfortunately just kept on going downhill. But the staying power part that I'm talking about is highly important. That's what separates a rapper with longevity from one with zero longevity. The thing about a rapper like Xan though is he's never had any qualities that makes him stick. The bar in the industry isn't all that high as it is. So when I say qualities, I'm just talking about things like having the ability to make great records, consistency, etc. Even a Lil Pump had somewhat of a consistent sound. That's why he has multiple big records under his belt. As far as Lil Xan in 2020 though, he's dropped a couple songs this year. I've never personally been a big fan of Lil Xan to begin with, but comparing what he's dropping right now to the kind of music he was dropping when he blew up, I mean, it really sounds like he's not even trying nowadays. Now, I know that Lil Xan has been battling addiction because he's publicly talked about it and even checked himself into rehab in 2018. I don't want to put the blame on that for why he fell off, but obviously he's human. It's gonna affect him somehow. It's gonna affect the music one way or the other, right? Now, with that being said, when it comes to this whole Lil Xan fell off conversation, what exactly can we learn? First and foremost, rappers like Lil Xan aren't really meant to last. They simply come and then they're gone tomorrow. Even though he's ding 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 arrived to the fall off destination. What did I say in that Lil Pump video? He's always gonna have fans, and the same goes for Lil Xan. He's still gonna be making a living off of making music for years to come, unless he stays on the drugs and that could lead to his demise. That's another conversation. I'm not really saying anything controversial here. We've seen it happen to other artists in hip-hop. Those drugs will literally take you away if you don't beat your addiction, and I'm directly speaking to Lil Xan right now. A lot of these young rappers get so lost in the clout, the fame, and the lifestyle. Next thing you know, that kind of lifestyle puts them in a situation where they end up taking something that ends up taking them away. I know that I'm on here talking about how Lil Xan fell off and whatnot, but at the end of the day, man, I don't want to see another young rapper losing their life. It's a reality. We've seen it happen. And I can't stress this enough when it comes to Lil Xan, because every single video I've seen of him in the past year, he's not looking good, man. Adam22 did this life update on him back in October, and maybe you're gonna see what I see. This was an update on how he's genuinely living nowadays, and do you see what I see? Just looking at this photo right here, I'm not really liking what I'm seeing. If you've seen the whole thing, then you probably know that it looks worrying. I mean, Lil Xan could barely open his eyes. Am I wrong for thinking that's a bad sign? Let me put it to you like this. If I was Lil Xan's friend, I would make it my life mission to have him not looking like this. At the end of the day, you can't control another man's decisions. Like they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. But your surroundings, the people around you, have a huge impact on how you're showing up, especially as a rapper. A lot of rappers out here got a bunch of people around them, but none of those people are actually with them. They don't actually have their back. They're only there for a meal. Let's keep it real. That's why the unspoken reason as to why a lot of rappers fall off is because of yes men. The people around them are not holding them accountable to be great. They're holding them accountable to simply scrape by. That's why when you see a rapper who's constantly getting into trouble, folks in their environment are most likely not checking them. A lot of times it can also be because they're simply finding themselves in these new industry circles, and those people are most definitely not gonna check you because they're in it for the ride. They don't really care about you. I say that to say, when I see someone like Lil Xan looking so strung out, it worries me and it makes me question, how is he showing up like this? It's no secret that being medicated will slow you down big time as a rapper. We've seen it happen to Famous Dex. Famous Dex was on his way to dominating Chicago and then got lazy, was heavily medicating, and then last year, I talked about this, but he was rushed to the hospital after a seizure because of this. So there's something to be said here. But when it comes to Lil Xan, I think it's very reasonable to talk about this when it comes to Lil Xan, because hello, did you forget about that situation where he was venting to his fans on Instagram Live, and then out of nowhere his camera got snatched very forcefully?
I just found out my dad I just found out my dad is a crackhead. No, stop. I just found out my dad is a crackhead.
Yo, stat.
Yo, look, they really trying to take me off live right now.
This is clearly a scenario where the brand, which is Lil Xan himself, has very little say in his own career. This is not unusual in the music industry, not at all. We've heard other cases of this. Last year, Lil Peep's own mother sued his then management for allegedly exploiting him by supplying him with pills. Something like this only happens for one reason, and that's because you're easily controlled when you're not in your right mind. As for Lil Xan, that might be exactly what it is. That's what it looked like to me when I saw that video. With this being said, this could have played a part in his fall off. If your every move is dictated by the people who are backing you up, nothing you do is really gonna be authentic. It's all gonna be a bunch of calculated moves in order to pump out as much resources from you as possible. Now, let's call this the Clout Cobain effect. Denzel Curry was the clown in the circus being controlled by the ringmaster. They were squeezing every single dollar out of him, and of course, the ringmaster is the label. Now, apply that to Lil Xan in this situation, and it all starts to make sense. Do you also remember what happened at the end of the Clout Cobain music video? After being pushed around by the ringmaster, after going on Instagram Live for the clout, after being constantly laughed at by the crowd, he had enough and decided to pull the trigger because he was sick and exhausted of being the puppet. The message that was being portrayed by Denzel on Clout Cobain is really relevant here because Lil Xan was directly being controlled. That was, of course, exposed on camera. The question is, who was he being controlled by? Most likely the label. For what reason though? So he doesn't start yapping away and ruin that good thing they have going. That's directly gonna hurt the agenda of keeping the Lil Xan machine going, and of course they're really trying to avoid that at all costs.
What mental illness really looks like. Y'all want to see what that looks like? I just did this to my car. Scratched it, keyed it up. I just bought it. I just bought this car. It's keyed all the way. Door. Want to know why I'm doing that? Because of mental illness. To my management. I'm a to everybody. I don't get control of my license. I don't get control of my bank account. I don't get control of I can't even drive that car. They put it in the basement so I couldn't take it.
Now this is Lil Xan straight up saying that, hey, I am that machine. It's kind of sad that so many people overlooked this and decided to clown him instead of being concerned. To wrap this entire conversation up, it seems like to me that Lil Xan was headed for the fall off zone since day one. Like I said, rappers like him come and go. He wasn't supposed to last for a long time, and to be honest, I'm not surprised he ended up falling off. So yeah, this was a long one to say the least. But Lil Xan, the fall off, what do you think about this topic? Definitely let me know in the comment section below and let's have a discussion about this.